Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is an absolute mess of a film that attempts to sprint to the finish line of a 9-film saga and just ends up falling flat on its face. It disregards everything that came before it, throwing away the unique ideas presented in previous films in service of a rushed plot that jumps from scene to scene with no order or reason, all for the purpose of setting up a finale that hadn't been earned. The movie attempted to play it safe after how divisive The Last Jedi was and managed to unify both sides by making everybody hate it. I left the theater on opening night with a feeling of emptiness, just asking the question, what was the point of it all? I literally don't know where to start with this movie. There's so much going through my head that just writing down everything I have to say is going to be an enormous challenge, let alone making it something comprehensible or unique when the topic's been covered to death. But I'm just going to get started and try and do my best. You know, as Yoda says, do or do not, there is no try, unless if the goals you set for yourself are absurdly high, and it will be best for your mental health to take things slow and not overwhelm yourself by trying to stick to a dated binary concept of failure and success. You know, the Star Wars quote. So I guess a bit of preface is a good place to start. This video will be rewriting The Rise of Skywalker on its own. So that means we're not changing anything else in the sequel trilogy or connecting it to my Last Jedi rewrite, since I kind of changed my tune when it comes to some of the things that I said in that video, and also I kind of wrote myself into a little bit of a hole when it comes to that whole cliffhanger ending and stuff. And overall, I think it'd just be better to address this movie as a standalone thing. I recognize that at its core, the biggest failing of Episode 9 is that it's a result of a lack of planning on Lucasfilm's part when it comes to the sequel trilogy. Across the trilogy, so many ideas were created and thrown away by the following film, and The Rise of Skywalker had to try and conclude those ideas along with the franchise as a whole, which is an enormous task that required a lot of time and care that the movie just didn't have given the release window and the messy that went on behind the scenes. Can I say yet? Probably not. And so because of that, my point with this particular video is to show that it is possible to do that. Or at the very least, it's possible to come close to something of that magnitude. While the movie's incredibly flawed throughout, the thing that really bothered me the most about the film was the purpose of it all. When it came out, I was not very fond of The Last Jedi. I felt like it was a decent movie with half of it being really incredible and the other half being god-awful terrible. And while my opinion on the whole thing has changed a bit, which I'll get into later, I still hold relatively the same opinion. However, looking back on it, the movie had purpose. The Last Jedi, for better or for worse, had a point that it was trying to make, and it attempted to push along the narrative in the universe in a unique way, and that's something I have to respect. In comparison, The Rise of Skywalker is the direct opposite of that. Episode 9 has no point. It has no meaning, and if it does, it's a very muddled message. When I left the theater after seeing it for the first time, the only thing I could think was, what's the point of it all? What was the point of this movie, of the trilogy as a whole? What was the message? And that's the thing that really hurt me the most when it comes to this movie. Sure, there are things that happen in the story that I don't like, and I'll definitely get to those, but the most important thing in a movie, at least to me, is the purpose behind it. What is this trying to say? What is this trying to do? And I just felt like this movie had no purpose other than to just exist. So above all else, that's what I want to try and remedy when it comes to this rewrite, to find this movie its purpose. To do that, I'm going to take apart this movie scene by scene and approach the decisions made and see how they can be changed or overhauled to bring about a message that works for the movie on its own, but also within the greater scope of the sequel trilogy and Star Wars as a whole. I'm going to be taking some elements from the leaked Trevorrow script, but I'm not going to be word for word copying that, assuming that leaked script is even real. Upon reading through it, I think that Trevorrow's version would have been better in some ways, but then also worse in some others. Overall, if I had to pick between Trevorrow's and what we got, I would probably prefer Trevorrow's, but it'd still be incredibly flawed. Alright, that's enough bullshit. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of it all by starting at the beginning. Holy shit, the beginning of this movie is a disaster. Even starting with something as simple as the opening crawl. The crawl has always served as just setup for the current Star War that's going on, just like the old serials that they're based on. It's to provide a little bit of backstory and like an info dump on what the characters are doing. Nothing groundbreaking, just basic fun adventure stuff. And you don't just casually mention that the Emperor survived! Jesus Christ! Because now, in 50 years, assuming we as a culture make it that far, this rate I'm not even sure anymore, people are going to be streaming this series directly to their brains through the new Disney Plus Pro 20 Max Omega streaming service, and they're gonna be lost. So my way of fixing the crawl is to make it super simple. Make it something like, "Hark, bellow bid our father, the Sea King, rise from the depths full foul in his fury, black waves teeming with salt foam to smother this young mouth with pungent Oh wait, hold up, that's the monologue from The Lighthouse. Sorry, my bad. My bad, everybody. Sorry, that's on me. But it should just be something like, First Order bad, Resistance good, Kylo Ren bad, good guys are doing something, and any other setup and exposition that the story needs to get going. Nothing groundbreaking, very simple. Also, it's a little sad that the literal first possible thing that can happen in this movie is already dumb, but I guess that's just where we are in life. So we open on Mustafar, with Kylo Ren's Star Destroyer looming over it. We see an Imperial structure, old and abandoned, and Kylo Ren steps into the remains of Vader's castle. Now, I want to talk about the opening scenes of this movie, because holy fucking shit, that's some of the worst pacing I've ever seen. The first hour feels like we're being whiplashed from scene to scene with no clear direction in sight. The pacing in general for this movie is abysmal, and it's the worst in the first 30 minutes. So much happens in such a short amount of time that even when rewatching this movie for the third or god forbid fourth time, you're still confused and dizzy from how ludicrously fast everything goes.
Ludicrous speed! Sir, hadn't you better buckle up? Now buckle this! Ludicrous speed! Go!
The might of the final order will soon be ready.
A spy in the First Order.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
They got Chewie! They got him! I'm the spy.
You are a Palpatine.
What have I done?
So to remedy this, we cut it all out. Cut all that shit out. I'm specifically talking about the action scene on the Falcon, where we find out about the spy and stuff, and the scene where Rey trains. I don't think they really add much to the story or the characters, and they can both be condensed together while still presenting roughly the same idea. It also benefits the movie as a whole, since it gives us some extra time to work in longer and more in-depth scenes that explore the characters and do more than just push the plot along. So Kylo walks through the ruins of Vader's castle, with the Knights of Ren at his side. My favorite part about The Force Awakens was that Kylo was basically like a Darth Vader fanboy, and that's not just because I'm fanboy, even though that might be part of it. It's because that's a really interesting and unique take that, if explored properly, could have been really fun while also providing an interesting commentary on the state of Star Wars as a whole. So I'm going to focus heavily on that aspect of the character. To his right is the second in command of the Knights of Ren. I don't know any of their fucking names. I don't even think Lucasfilm does, so I'm just going to pick one at random and go with it. Oh god, oh wow, these names suck. Alright, let's go with Vikral. And fuck it, we're gonna make him a commander too. So Commander Vikral is his right-hand man and the second in command to the Knights of Ren. Maybe there's a book to tell you who the actual second in command is. I don't fucking know. I did a lot of research for this. I couldn't find anything. The Knights of Ren are barely a footnote in the sequel trilogy. They were introduced in episode 7 without any real meaning, and thus Rian Johnson didn't know what to do with them in episode 8 because he'd assumed there was some like emotional connection between them and Kylo, so he didn't use them in the throne room fight because he thought it'd be weird for Kylo to be killing his friends with like no remorse. And then JJ came back in and didn't know what to do with them, so he just had them be faceless pawns that Kylo killed with no remorse. It's like they were playing a game of hot potato with this cast of 6 characters that by all accounts should be more interesting than they are. They come upon a room with a large bacta tank in the center of it. Kylo approaches it and he orders the Knights of Ren to leave him in peace so he can use it. Kylo takes off his helmet and he places his hand on the glass, closing his eyes to try and connect with his grandfather. He hears a voice. "See you around, kid." Kylo whips out his lightsaber and turns around, searching the room for the intruder, but it's empty. We transition to the Falcon as it flies through hyperspace. Rey sits in one of the rooms, meditating and floating through the air. Books and pieces of metal and trash and even BB-8 float around her in rings as she tries to reach out and connect with the voices of past Jedi. She sighs and she uses the Force to pick up the Skywalker lightsaber and she attaches it to her belt. The lightsaber has seen better days. After the events of Episode 8, where it went through some stuff, Rey has attempted to repair the weapon, but it's not in great condition. Her repairs are sloppy, with amateur welding leaving the legendary weapon a husk of what it once was. Because of the broken kyber crystal, the blade is fiery and crackly, not unlike Kylo Ren's blade. Now, I'm not sure if you're picking up on that super subtle symbolism there, but a big theme that I'm trying to push with this movie is the idea of clinging to the past, but for the worst. The Last Jedi broke the Skywalker lightsaber as a metaphor for the series. Destroying this legendary blade that's been a symbol for the entire franchise is a painful but necessary move to push the series forward. So to have Rey rebuild the lightsaber off screen before the next movie feels like it's completely ignoring that principal message. Because as much as you don't want to admit it, Star Wars as a franchise is very limited, at least when it comes to the saga movies. The galaxy itself is so broad and expansive, but the movies focus on such a small side of that world that you're gonna run out of meaningful stories eventually. As much as I'm not a fan of Solo, that movie at least tried some unique stuff and pushed the universe, which I really appreciate. I think Star Wars needs to grow and evolve over time, or else it's gonna be stuck in this 1970s nostalgia fest of just reminding you of things that you know, when it can and should be something greater. So I believe that we can use this movie, the final film of the Skywalker saga, to really cement that idea of progression and growth. If you don't mind me sounding a little pretentious, the lightsaber is a meta-commentary about the saga as a whole, and the idea of clinging to the past without accepting change, just like Rey is with the lightsaber, is only making it broken and ugly. The Falcon, piloted by Finn and Poe, lands on the desert planet of Pasaana. Like I said, we're basically skipping the first 20 minutes and using the crawl to fill in any unnecessary gaps or information. So they go down to Pasaana, and their mission is sort of similar to what we got. Their informants on the planet has information about the First Order's plans, but can't contact the Resistance, so they have to meet with them. The scene with them going to Space Coachella and meeting with the locals is all the same. That was fun. Something goes wrong, maybe Rey and Kylo still do their little forced Skype call thing, and the gang meets up with a mysterious masked figure who takes them to a safe location. Lando Calrissian takes off his helmet and gives that big, charming grin. Ideally, Billy D. Williams would have been given a script for the scene, but it's fine, we work with what we have. It turns out that Lando is the informant, and he tells him that there's a rumor floating around that the First Order is planning something big, something called the Final Order. Nobody knows what it is or where it is, only that General Hux learned about it from a mysterious source out of nowhere, and is focusing all efforts on preparing the Final Order to use it. If the First Order gets a hold of this power, they could have the potential to wipe out the galaxy and bring back the Galactic Empire. Their mission now is to find out what the Final Order is, as well as its location, and orchestrate an attack to destroy it. To make matters worse, they only have a certain amount of time before the Final Order is unleashed. Let's say it's 48 hours or something, just add some more suspense. They steal a couple speeders to escape, and they get chased down by the First Order, and we get that speeder chase.
They fly now! They fly now! They fly now!
They crash the speeders, and instead of getting in that weird quicksand thing, they see a small cave along the cliffside, and they make their way inside for cover. The cave is filled to the brim with treasure. Gems and gold and artifacts from all over the galaxy. Finn can make a comment about how it looks like some kind of hoarder lived there. And we see a skeleton clutching a small wooden box. Maybe it's like an alien skeleton to be like, hey, it's Star Wars. Dark side energy radiates from the box, and Rey feels drawn to it. She pries it from the skeleton's fingers, brushes the dust off, and opens it. Emperor Palpatine's lightsaber lays in the small crate, its metal finish still shimmering and reflective. Rey grabs hold of it, and suddenly the entire world around her is whisked away. She hears a scream, followed by the Emperor's laugh and the crackling of Force lightning. She also hears a word: Exegol. She sees a fleet of Star Destroyers and an army of stormtroopers in red armor, before she finds herself back in the cave and with her friends as quickly as she had left it. Meanwhile, we see Kylo Ren either in Pisana or on his way there, or whatever, and he gets a quick glimpse of this vision as well. I think it'd be really cool to get a parallel to her vision with Anakin's lightsaber, only a darker and more sinister version. A good way to explain it might be to say that Rey has the power of psychometry, meaning she's able to see glimpses of an object's past if she touches it. It's something that Cal Kestis could do in Fallen Order, and also Quinlan Vos could do it as well. And those two were some of the coolest fucking Jedi to ever exist, so I don't see the harm in Rey being part of that club, even though Vos was way cooler in Legends, and they nerfed him, that's fine, I'm not bitter. So, okay, I'm gonna be talking about Palpatine now. So I really don't think that Palpatine should have been in this movie. I think him being alive undermines the sacrifice that Vader made in Return of the Jedi, and his inclusion in this movie wasn't at all worth the damage that it did to the overall franchise. And that's not even to mention how the movie doesn't even bother to explain how he survived. I don't care if he's a clone or whatever bullshit excuse they've been saying now. I just don't think he should have been in the movie. But if for whatever reason their hands were tied, either from studio stuff or whatever reason, assuming Palpatine had to be in this movie for marketing or whatever, then you at least have to do something interesting with him. So because of that, I think I found a way of incorporating him that I really like. For a moment, Rey is motionless. Darth Sidious is alive. He's still out there somewhere, pulling the strings and influencing the First Order, and only she and Kylo Ren know about it. Basically, what Rey's vision would do is serve as a replacement for that line in the opening crawl about the message that Palpatine's alive. Because like I said, don't do that shit in the crawl, and definitely don't do that shit in fucking Fortnite. Rey, still stunned, starts to sense Kylo approaching, and she steps out into the desert to confront him. Kylo's TIE fighter speeds towards her, and she pulls out her lightsaber. We got a cool running flip thing from the trailers, because that's a cool stunt. Don't ask why he didn't shoot her, I don't fucking know. During this confrontation, Chewie ends up being kidnapped and is taken away on the transport. Rey reaches out and grabs onto the shuttle, stopping it in midair. Out of the rubble of his TIE fighter, Kylo arrives and grabs hold of the shuttle as well. Rey and Kylo tug on the ship together, fighting for control. Rey hears a laugh and the image of Palpatine flashes before her, and a bolt of Force lightning shoots out of her hands. The lightning barely misses the transport, but the shock of it all forces Rey to lose her grip on the shuttle, allowing it to escape. There was absolutely no reason to do that stupid, weird, Chewie death fake out. The only impact that it had was made people angry in the theater. It doesn't add anything to the actual stories and only exists to get a reaction of the audience. And even then, it's resolved literally 2 minutes later, like I timed it. The conflict of the characters thinking that Chewie is dead doesn't do anything meaningful. It makes Finn look fucking stupid. Like, is Finn gonna be okay doing the little shell game where you have to keep track of the ball? Is he gonna be, does he have object permanence? Do stormtroopers have that? Maybe stormtroopers don't have that. So him just being captured is just fine. They managed to steal a ship to escape as the Falcon had been taken by the First Order, and they regroup to talk about how they can save Chewie. Rey shooting the lightning in combination with her vision makes her start to feel a dark presence that she's never noticed before. Something that's been looming over her for as long as she can remember, and hasn't recognized until now. She tells everyone her suspicion, that Palpatine's alive, but she's not entirely sure yet. She tells them about her vision, and about Exegol. Upon hearing the planet's name, 3PO's eyes turn red, and he starts speaking in some ancient Sith tongues or some shit, and then he says in Palpatine's voice, I gotta do a Palpatine impression, fuck.
The might of the final order is awaiting on...
The might of the final order is awaiting on Exegol. Use it to reclaim the galaxy should the Empire fall. We learned that even though 3PO's memories were wiped, there are still fragments left over from his time during the Clone Wars. Maybe Finn can be like, you fought in the Clone Wars? Like a reference, you get that? It's a reference to the old shit. Since he was property of the Republic and Palpatine had control over the Republic as Chancellor, he had access to all the data stored in the Republic's archives. This must have been something that was left over from Palpatine's private section, something encrypted. The data's been lying dormant in Republic droids all this time, but since Palpatine never would have expected anybody to keep a droid for as long as 3PO, he never actively destroy the information. I know it doesn't make like a ton of sense, but I really want to use the droids to tie the sequel trilogy back to the prequels. Since they've been around for everything, I think that it might be a good way to incorporate them as more than just a comic relief, or at least like a little bit. I've always liked when the Empire's main weakness is their overconfidence and their lack of respect for quote-unquote lower life forms. And because 3PO's memories are still lost, as well as encrypted, they need to find somebody who can restore those memories and break past that encryption. Poe mentions that he knows a place, and they travel to Kijimi to find their droidsmith. Now, Kijimi was the worst part of this movie. I think most people can agree. It just felt like a weird pit stop that took up time in a movie that felt like it was short on time. Zori Bliss was an uninteresting character, and the plot line, I put quotes around that, surrounding Poe as a spice runner doesn't line up with how the character's been presented in any other media, and the supposedly emotional moment about 3PO is completely erased. The only good thing about Kijimi is Babu Frick, but even then he was a little forced, I don't know. He feels like they were really trying to make another Baby Yoda. So they arrive on Kijimi to restore 3PO's memories, while the others want to learn about the final order. Rey is focused on Palpatine and is only focused on that. Now, since Poe being a spice runner flies in the face of everything that we know about him, we're not doing that. Instead, we establish that during his time in the Navy, Poe helped to liberate this village from a regime. This movie tries really hard to make Poe into a Han Solo clone, when that's really not what he is. We see him interacting with villagers, remembering their names and having little inside jokes and stuff like that. Poe is a good person who actually cares and has done some real good in the galaxy in his time in the Republic. Okay, now I want to talk about Finn. Finn is a character that I admittedly up until now in this rewrite have kind of been ignoring because it's difficult to convey some of the stuff that I want to do with him through this whole format of a YouTube video. But overall, Finn was done absolutely fucking dirty in this movie. In The Force Awakens, Finn was basically the main character. It's debatable between him and Rey, but he was just as much of a main star as she was. But for some reason since then, he's been consistently sidelined and moved to the background until this movie where he doesn't do anything but yell Rey's name over and over.
Ray! Ray, I never told you Ray! What? Ray!
Finn.
Ray! Ray! Ray, come on! Ray! Ray, come on! Ray! Ray, come on! Ray! Come on! Ray! Ray! Ray!
I think Finn needs a genuine, real emotional arc in this movie, since he's one of the best characters in the trilogy and he's been treated like trash. Also, John Boyega is a fucking madman and I absolutely love him. The second his check cleared for this movie, he didn't give a fuck about who he pissed off anymore, and that's the kind of energy I want from my Hollywood celebrities. On top of all the great work he did for the Black Lives Matter movement and the protest, he's just a great guy in my book, and stan culture is bad, but stan John Boyega, everybody. And I think he deserved a little bit better in this movie. So Finn sees how much Poe has accomplished, given his interactions with everyone on Kijimi, and he wants to find his purpose like Poe has. Finn has been kind of stuck in this limbo of not really understanding what he should be, and I feel like this movie should have explored that and given him a stronger role in the galaxy. Depending on if Rose is here on Kijimi or not, maybe we can establish that she and Finn are a little bit awkward after their weird little kiss, and he and Poe can talk about it together, which can lead to establishing Finn's internal conflict and also exploring the very gay relationship between Finn and Poe. I said it before and I'll say it again, Finn and Poe are gay for each other and that's final. It doesn't need to be established in previous movies. The fact that a gay or otherwise non-hetero character has to have their sexuality established is pretty fucking messed up, especially when it's just a C-plot love story in a space adventure fantasy series. Finn and Poe being in a relationship would really move the series forward and also piss off all the right people, and it'd just be, chef's kiss, so beautiful, I love it. So Babu Frick or whatever fucks around and finds a way to restore 3PO's memories, but it's dangerous. It's really a 50-50 chance whether he'll survive or not. I liked the idea of 3PO taking a risk for his friends and for the mission, so that's something I want to keep in. I just think the moment in the movie is ruined when you look at how everybody in the group treats him. They all basically bully him and belittle him constantly, and then they expect us to have this emotional, one final look at my friends scene when that's not at all what's been established and what we've witnessed. It's a problem for the entire main cast throughout the whole movie, but 3PO especially. Remember, if your friends are toxic to you all the time and are never supportive of you, then they're not your friends. They're just some bitches. And we don't fuck with bitches. So 3PO takes the risk and has his memory restored. The lights in his eyes go dark and he slumps down motionless. Rey and everybody has a moment of silence for the fallen droid when suddenly 3PO whirs back to life and jolts up. He starts speeding through his new memories as the events of the movies whiz through his memory banks. It might be funny to use the moment to make fun of some of the more ridiculous stuff in Star Wars, like maybe he calls out, "Wait, she's your sister, don't kiss her!" Or in other moments just to kind of make fun of how fucked up Star Wars is. He also makes a mention of the Death Star, and that starts the gears in Rey's head turning. 3PO snaps out of it, and if we want to keep the stuff about him losing his memory whenever we can, potentially funny, but in the end it didn't really do it for me. Before they can get the location of Exegol, Kylo Ren's Star Destroyer blasts into orbit above the planet. The movie had a lot of following and tracking and stuff, especially with the Knights of Ren, but it felt kind of weird and rushed, so maybe earlier on we can establish that one of the Knights of Ren's an expert hunter or tracker and was tasked with following our heroes and giving their locations to Kylo. When Kylo's ship arrives, Finn starts to feel something familiar in the back of his mind that he can't quite explain. Just a small voice telling him that Chewie is on that ship. He tells his feeling to Rey, who's been too distracted to sense Chewie, and she confirms it. Now, I'm fine with Finn being Force sensitive. I think it's kind of cool having a main character who's connected to the Force, but not in like a combat, moving things kind of way. Overall, it makes sense that the Force is more like a mystical entity and not just something you have to be born with. Overall, I think the way that the movie went about doing it was absolute fucking trash. It comes out of nowhere and it feels like it's only added to explain away certain things about Finn. They decide now is as good a time as any to rescue Chewie, but they have no way of getting on board. We're basically just cutting out the Zori Bliss character altogether since she really added nothing aside from the weird token thing. So instead, we could say that Babu Frick or whatever is able to get them the access codes that they need to sneak on, and he's willing to do it because he trusts Poe after all he did to help or some shit like that. They make their way into the Star Destroyer and search for Chewie. During their search, Rey feels something dark pull at the back of her mind, and she breaks off from the group to investigate. Poe and Finn find Chewie, but they end up getting cornered by stormtroopers and are captured. Meanwhile, Rey investigates the feeling she had and discovers it's kind of his little playroom with all his little toys, little Star Wars toys. It's got a bunch of action figures. That feeling she had being Vader's helmet. Dark side energy radiates off of it. While it may technically have been Vader's helmet, it and the rest of Anakin Skywalker was property of Darth Sidious, and that's why she felt drawn to it. Kylo appears before her in the Force and they talk. Two of them confirm with each other their suspicions about Palpatine being alive, and they have their fight. I thought this fight was probably one of the best parts of the movie, since it incorporated their communication pretty well, and it was interesting to see how they interacted with the two different areas while fighting with each other. The only thing is, like, what does it look like for people who are not involved? Is like Rey and Kylo, are they just swinging their lightsabers like randomly? Like, what's going on? Vader's helmet is knocked over and Kylo sees it fall to the ground. He uses this to figure out that Rey's in his quarters and breaks their connection. He orders the stormtroopers to lock down the ship and he hears a voice again. Strike me down in anger and I will always be with you. During their fight, we see Finn and Poe and Chewie sitting in a jail cell. The cell is guarded by a single stormtrooper. Finn starts to stare at the stormtrooper and accidentally grabs his attention. Finn says that he recognizes the trooper. FN-2198. They were in the same troop and they were like brothers before Finn left. Finn talks with the stormtrooper, asking about his family, how it felt killing innocents, what his name was, and the trooper isn't able to answer a single one of them. Finn appeals to that sense of confusion about the First Order and he gains the trooper's sympathies, and eventually he convinces him to let them escape. During their escape, Finn looks at the trooper and offers for him to come with them, but he declines. He tells Finn, "You have your place, I have mine, but you started something here. I won't forget what you said." Finn says to him, "You're not part of the First Order, and you're not FN-2198 anymore. You need a name." The trooper pauses for a moment and takes off his helmet. "Nate. Call me Nate." Finn smiles and nods and rushes to escape on the Falcon. Rey runs out into the hangar and Kylo Ren's TIE fighter lands before her. Dozens of stormtroopers train their blasters on Rey and Kylo steps out and talks to her. He tells her that they have a common enemy, Palpatine. He wants to find Palpatine and kill him, solidifying his path to the dark side and becoming a true Sith by fulfilling the rule of two. He extends his hand and asks her to join him against their common goal. He does not tell her that she's secretly Palpatine's granddaughter. It's not possible for me to find the words to explain how stupid that revelation is in every conceivable way, but I'm gonna try. But first, I need to talk about a little thing called expectations. The concept of subverting expectations has been around in storytelling for who fucking knows. I'm a YouTuber, I'm not an anthropologist, but for a long time. It's not something new that the SJWs and the liberals introduced to your comic movies to disrespect their legacy. It's a fundamental part of writing. If the audience is aware of every single story point that's going to happen before it happens, that can be pretty fucking boring. So a good writer needs to be aware of those expectations that people have for the story and make the decision to either leave the story as it is or change it to adjust for those expectations. The reason I bring this up and talk about subversion is because I want to talk about what was probably the biggest subversion that was in The Last Jedi, and that being the revelation about Rey's heritage. This is a really long fucking video. This reveal was absolutely perfect. The more and more I think about the decision, the more I love it. Now, mind you, I was never someone who cared much about Rey's heritage. I didn't really think theorizing about it all was very fun. You know, I didn't really care. But that was a big mystery from episode 7 leading into 8 that a lot of people wanted answers to. In that moment on the ship, Rey wanted to be told that she was special. She wanted to be connected to Luke or Obi-Wan or fucking, who knows, maybe Mace Windu. That wouldn't work. She wanted to be born into a special family, or at the very least that her parents cared about her. And so when Kylo tells her that she's nobody, that's literally the worst possible thing for her to hear. Just like Luke learning that Vader is his father, the revelation completely shakes up our main character's worldview and forces them to reconsider what they stand for. In addition to all that, Star Wars as a franchise has always been about the same few families and the same powerful bloodlines, and that's really frustrating. Obviously there are stories and characters who aren't attached to stuff like that, but in the mainline saga films, to have every character be related to someone from a previous movie, it's just lazy and not very interesting. It basically says that you can't be a strong hero unless you were born into one of these 3 families, which isn't really the hopeful message that Star Wars should be known for. Rey's heritage basically takes that idea of powerful bloodlines and throws that shit in the fucking garbage. Her not being related to anybody tells the audience that anybody can be a hero, no matter how you were born or what circumstances you had to face in your life. That's what the Broom Kid scene was showing at the end of The Last Jedi. This kid, who's also a nobody, has just as much potential to be the next Luke Skywalker as anybody does. Now, the execution of it was a little bit off and a little bit goofy, but it's the message of it that's so important, and I'm upset with myself for not recognizing this until now, until this movie where it fucks it up. Because changing that and retconning Rey's heritage into being Palpatine's granddaughter just undoes literally every single great thing about that decision. Firstly, it's a lazy retcon that doesn't make sense, but secondly, it undoes the harsh realization that Rey had to make, basically telling her the answers that she wanted to hear in the previous movie and not giving her any real growth. It's like if in Return of the Jedi, Vader's like, "Oh, I'm not actually your dad, sorry, I lied." Thirdly, it just makes these movies in the saga all about the same families again, completely undoing the main thing that made the original decision so great. It says to be powerful and to be a hero, you have to be born in one of these special families. I understand that the message that The Last Jedi presented is still technically there. It's just way muddier than it was presented before. Becoming a hero despite your evil bloodline is a fine story, but it's been done to death, whereas becoming a hero even when you're not born special is entirely new to the franchise and is necessary to move the saga forward. And so because of this, we're going to completely erase the whole Rey Palpatine storyline. Rey's going to stay a nobody. No last name, no nothing. Just Rey. With Kylo's hand outstretched, a piece of Rey considers taking it and joining forces with him against Palpatine. Before she makes the decision, the Millennium Falcon shows up to rescue her. She leaps onto it, and they escape from the First Order once again. 3PO, with his newly regained memories, lays out a map to Exegol, and they make their way back to the Resistance base to form a plan. The gears in Rey's head after speaking to Kylo and learning about Palpatine, they come to a halt, and she makes a realization. Rey figures that Palpatine is in the Endor system, amidst the ruins of the second Death Star. This can be like a bit of a meta commentary, since Rey is kind of meant to serve as like a stand-in for Star Wars fans, and it can kind of poke fun at all the theorizing that people were doing when that first trailer dropped, like the whole Ewok death cult thing. So Rey makes the decision to go to the Death Star to face Palpatine instead of helping out on Exegol. She says that she has to kill him before Kylo does, and put an end to his evil once and for all, because that's what a Jedi would do. Poe and Finn try to reason with her, but her mind is made up, and she abandons her friends to focus on old enemies of the past. Back on his ship, Kylo speaks to the Knights of Ren and General Hux, and he tells them of his plan, and that he knows where Rey's going, since he made the same realization that she did. Commander Vickrell doesn't think he should chase after Palpatine, saying that he needs to focus on the matter at hand of preparing the final order and not go around chasing ghosts. Kylo ignores his advice and brushes him aside, preparing his TIE fighter. Vickrell looks to Hux and the other members of the Knights of Ren, and the inner workings of betrayal start to form. Over at the Resistance base, Poe and the rest of the Resistance start to plan their attack on Exegol. Thanks to 3PO's intel, we now know what the final order is. A fleet of Star Destroyers Palpatine locked away during the Clone Wars, as a backup plan should anything happen to him or the Empire. Each ship is armed to the brim with a new type of stormtrooper, the Sith Trooper. Unlike traditional troopers, these are clones, modified to the point of them no longer being human in order to make them the perfect soldier. The First Order can use this fleet and this new army to wipe out the Resistance and what's left of the New Republic. We're cutting out the bit where each ship has a planet-destroying weapon. Literally 3 Star Wars movies already deal with Death Star equivalents. We don't need to make a 4th. However, I do like how it was a fleet of ships that was the main goal for the First Order. Something I really liked from The Force Awakens, which was unfortunately kind of ignored in The Last Jedi, was how small and unorganized the First Order seemed to be. During the briefing, Finn speaks up and talks about Nate. He says that the troopers are people too. Each and every one of them was stolen from their homes and brainwashed into becoming soldiers, and they all deserve a chance to redeem themselves and join the Resistance. The idea is completely foreign to the Resistance, and most of the members go silent. Before Poe says to Finn, Then maybe that's your place in all this. Light that fire. Whatever you need, we got your back. Rey arrives on Kefir amidst the ruins of the Death Star. She senses a powerful dark side energy coming from within the wreckage, and she ventures through the remains to find it. All the while, as she searches, she hears the voice of Palpatine in her head, guiding her, telling her what she wants to hear. She has to kill him, bring balance to the Force. It's the Jedi way. She makes her way into the ruins of the throne room, where she senses the dark side energy. The throne is covered in dust and cobwebs, and standing in the center of the room is Kylo Ren, staring at the empty chair where the Emperor once sat. He turns to Rey, and in his hand we see him holding onto something black. He throws it on the ground in front of Rey's feet, and we see that it's none other than the charred and mangled skull of the great and powerful Emperor Palpatine. Palpatine is dead, and he has been for years. Every single vision and voice that Rey had heard was all in her head, her own desires twisting her reality into what she wanted to be true. The same for Kylo. Rey and Kylo look at each other, each with so much pain in their eyes. The both of them were searching for the sense of satisfaction and closure that they could get from killing Palpatine, and to be able to solidify their place in the galaxy as Jedi or Sith, but now neither of them are able to obtain that catharsis, and instead are left empty and angry. Rey ignites her lightsaber, its blade jagged and fiery, and lunges for Kylo. The two of them clash blades and fight along the ruins of the Death Star, the waves crashing upon the wreckage. As they fight, Rey hears a faint voice in the distance, calling her name. Rey, fueled with anger, overpowers Kylo and has her blade to his chest. The voices grow louder. Rey, stop. This is not the way of the Jedi. Rey takes a step back and retracts her lightsaber. She looks at Kylo and sees all the pain and emptiness in his eyes, and she runs off, leaving him alone among the wreckage of the Empire. So we're not doing Leia's death. I think that entire plotline about her death and the prophecy was handled horribly and was incredibly disrespectful to the legacy of Carrie Fisher and the character of Leia. I understand that they were limited, but if they were that limited by the existing footage, then her role should have been limited too. Not to mention the overall handling of her death, with her just randomly dying after doing one thing for her son, and then her body lying there in full view of the rest of the movie was just ew. Kylo stands on the edge of the ruins and overlooks the water. He hears the voice again. Ben. Kylo shuts his eyes and scowls. You're not real. You just in my head. The camera pans to see Luke Skywalker standing behind him. I'm as real as you make me, Ben. Luke speaks to Kylo about his mistakes and the things that he's done, but also for the good that he can be. How he doesn't have to be a Sith, and he doesn't have to be Kylo Ren anymore. Ben Solo is still alive, he just has to be able to see the light. The camera shifts around the two of them, and with each new pass, the person speaking to him changes into someone new, pulling him to either the dark side or the light, someone important to Ben Solo and Kylo Ren. From Luke to Leia to Anakin, and then Vader, Palpatine, and Snoke. Everyone who has made him who he is today, showing the inner turmoil that Kylo is facing, until finally, the camera stops and Han Solo speaks to his son. As you can tell, we're keeping the Kylo Ren redemption stuff, the Kylo Ren-demption, as I like to call it. I think Star Wars at its core has always been about redemption and about making up for past mistakes, and while I want the series to progress, it's a really important theme that I think shouldn't be forgotten about. The rest of the scene is exactly how we got it in the original movie. This was without a doubt, and I think everybody will agree with me here, the absolute best part of the movie. Yeah, it's lazily explained as to what's happening, whether it's a Force ghost or a memory or whatever, it's a memory. It's just a visual representation of his turmoil. But the scene we got was so well done and so powerful that I wouldn't want that changed for anything. With this scenario, you can say that it's a result of Luke's Force ghost, or even just that it's a visual to show the struggle and inner monologue of Kylo Ren. I also love how it's the same dialogue as the scene from The Force Awakens. Some might think it's lazy and it doesn't make sense, but I see it as showing Kylo's character development across the trilogy and allows him, at least in a small way, to make up for the mistake of killing his father. Han places his hand on his son's face. Kylo Ren clenches his fist around his lightsaber, and suddenly the view shifts to inside the weapon, and we see his red, cracked kyber crystal housed within the core of the hilt. I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. You do. The color slowly starts to fade away from the crystal as Kylo forces his eyes closed to stop the tears. Ben Solo takes a deep breath and ignites the lightsaber, the blade and crossguard a fierce and blinding white. At the Resistance base, we see Poe and the others prepare to launch their attack. 3PO's intel reports that the way into and out of Exegol is dangerous and requires a precise flight path, so the Final Order Star Destroyers will be following that path, which is stored and provided to them by a base on the planet. A fleet of X-Wings and other ships attack the Final Order to keep them distracted, while Poe, Finn, Rose, and a few others break into the base to destroy the data. This can give Finn the opportunity to spark his rebellion and win over the remaining First Order Stormtroopers. Now on Exegol, we see Ben Solo, still donning his Kylo Ren clothes. He arrives and speaks with Commander Vickrell and General Hux. Ben, under the guise of Kylo Ren, uses his power as the Supreme Leader to command Vickrell and Hux into calling off the attack and abandoning the Final Order. At that moment, Vickrell looks to Hux and the other Knights of Ren, and they nod back at him. He denies the order and places his scythe on Ben's neck. Ben tries to resist, but he's overpowered by Vickrell and the other knights and taken into captivity. Hux then smiles to himself as he successfully overthrows Kylo Ren and secures his position as the new Supreme Leader. We cut to Ahch-To, where we see Rey throwing logs onto a massive fire. She burns all of her Jedi belongings, the books, the robes, everything she owns that reminds her of how she failed to become what she needed to be. She takes the Skywalker lightsaber and throws it into the fire before a hand reaches out and grabs it. Luke Skywalker's Force Ghost steps out into the fire and looks at Rey. It's time for lesson number 3, Padawan. Rey talks to Luke about how she failed, how she let the idea of Palpatine being alive corrupt her and cloud her judgment and made her abandon what was truly important. And because of that, she chooses to banish herself away on Ahch-To just like Luke, because she can never be a true Jedi. Luke pauses and then says, "Then don't be." He tells her how the Jedi were flawed, and by the time of the Clone Wars, they were shells of the peacekeepers that they claimed to be. Their own pride and sense of duty clouded them on what really mattered, the people, caring. That's why he wanted the Jedi to end. But now he realizes that it doesn't have to disappear. You can't destroy the past, but you can't cling on to it either. The Order and the Force just need to change and grow, and Rey can be the one to do that. Use the mistakes of the Jedi to become something more, something greater. Rey looks to Luke. How do I do that? Luke looks at the Skywalker lightsaber, damaged and dirty and barely holding on. You can start with this. He waves his hand and a cliffside erupts, revealing a small cave that had been covered by rocks lost to the ages. Rey enters the cave, followed by Luke, and she begins to hear something coming from within, like something in the cave is singing to her. She ventures deeper into the cave until she comes to the end, and she sees that the walls of the cave are lined from floor to ceiling with gemstones. She pulls a kyber crystal off the wall, and the colorless gem fills with a yellow light. We now cut to Exegol, as the Resistance fleet begins their attack. We get a cool Star Wars-y space battle, and Poe, Finn, and Rose sneak into the base on the planet. They fight against the Sith troopers but are overwhelmed and retreat to the nearest room they can find. The door shuts behind them, and they see that they've stumbled upon the Stormtrooper lodging. Dozens and dozens of Stormtroopers look at our heroes in silence, before one of them comes up to Finn and grunts, FN 2187. Before wrapping his arms around him and giving him a massive hug, and all the other troopers start laughing. The trooper takes off his helmet to reveal Nate, the stormtrooper from earlier. He spoke to everyone stationed at the base and told them what Finn told him, and that, combined with Hux and Vickrell abandoning the stormtroopers for the Sith troopers, was enough to convince them to spread the legend of FN 2187, otherwise known as Finn. But it might take some extra convincing to get them to fight for him. Finn is speechless, and Poe pats him on the back. "This is your moment, buddy. Make a difference." Finn clears his throat, and he speaks to all the stormtroopers, and he gives some big, grand, motivational speech that rallies them all and convinces them to fight alongside him. He says, "Hark! Bellow bid our dear father, the Sea King, rise from the depths full foul in his fury, black waves—" God damn it. That's from the lighthouse again. I'm sorry, guys. So they all join forces and fight against the Sith troopers, and they're more successful, but the Sith troopers are just too powerful for them. More powerful than any stormtrooper, and they end up getting cornered. The Sith troopers train their blasters on our heroes and prepare to execute them, when we hear the sound of a lightsaber igniting, and a yellow blade flies around the room and slices through all of them. Rey catches her new double-bladed saber staff and twirls it around. Fashioned from her old staff, one blade is full length and the other is a short pike. She embraces her friends and fights alongside them as they push back the Sith troopers and get to the database to destroy the Final Order's flight trajectory. But that's cut short when Rey feels something she thought she'd never sense. Ben Solo. Before she has time to react, a powerful force push slams her into the wall and starts dragging her through a door and through a tunnel that's been excavated. The door closes behind her, separating Rey from her friends and forcing them to move on without her. Rey heads forward through the cave until she reaches a clearing and sees Ben Solo, on his knees with his hands bound. Every inch of this place is teeming with hate and pain, more than anything Rey has ever experienced. A dark side nexus. Rey unbinds Ben's hands, so proud that he was able to overcome Kylo Ren, but this moment is cut short as Supreme Leader Hux and Vickrell Ren step out of the shadows. Rey and Ben both ignite their lightsabers and attack. Ben faces off with Vickrell, and Rey attempts to attack Hux, but he dodges every single attack with impossible precision. It's like he knows exactly what she's gonna do before she does it. Hux begins taunting the two of them. That's when he starts talking about his master. How his master knew it would end like this. How his master always planned this from the very beginning. And how they'll both face the wrath of Darth. Force lightning erupts from the shadows and rockets into both Hux and Vickrell. The two of them scream in agony as their flesh is burnt from the inside and they fall to the ground. Ben and Rey look to each other and they use their lightsabers to illuminate the cavern to find Baby Yoda, wearing black armor and holding a tiny I'm sorry guys, I couldn't help myself. Their lightsabers reveal nothing. It's like the Force lightning came out of thin air. That's when they hear a voice a voice all too familiar to the two of them. The spirit of Darth Sidious speaks to them, his voice echoing off the cavern walls. Palpatine is dead. He is 100% absolutely dead. He died on the Death Star, and that is official. But his spirit still lingers. His hate and his anger and his pure evil is so powerful that it's able to live on within the Force and in the galaxy, even though his body's been destroyed. The Jedi are able to become luminous beings and become one with the Force, but Palpatine is such a strong Sith that he's found a way to do the same thing and live on by fueling his energy based on people's memories of him. For as long as the name Palpatine has meaning, Darth Sidious will live on and continue to spread fear throughout the galaxy. But over time, as the Empire fell, his power grew weaker. He felt himself fading away more and more every day as the people started to move on and form their new republic. The remnants of the Empire were all but wiped out, and he had to do something to keep himself alive. So he started influencing others. Voices in heads, whispers in ears, ideas and plans for something that can restore the galaxy back to the greatness of the Empire. Whether it be Ben Solo falling to the dark side, or Hux learning about the Final Order, or Snoke, and even Luke Skywalker considering murdering one of his students. All fell under the influence of Darth Sidious in one way or another. Now that Rey and Ben have learned this, thanks to their connection and their tremendous power in the Force, Sidious can feed off their fear of him and become so powerful that he can create new life and begin again in a new body. Forever and ever, Darth Sidious and the Sith will rule. Force lightning shoots from thin air and hits Ben, sending him to his knees. Rey becomes immobile, unable to fight what she can't see. She can't help but be terrified. This fear fuels Palpatine, and he cackles as the dirt and stone from the cave shift together and form a representation of his spirit. Meanwhile, her friends are on the base, still trying to reach the database, but the Sith troopers continue to overpower them and they're forced into a corner. The database is within sight, and a single blaster shot could maybe destroy it, but it's a 1 in a million shot that's not possible with all the Sith troopers firing at them. It feels like hope is lost. Sidious shoots lightning at Rey, who tries to defend herself with her saber, but she's unsuccessful and falls to the ground. She reaches out to Ben, but their hands can't meet. As the lightning crackles through her veins, that's when she hears someone. Rey. Despite the pain, she hears this voice. It calms her, soothes her. Even in this moment of agony, she hears more voices calling out to her, calming her, giving her the strength she needs to overcome her fears. The voices of Jedi's past. Rey slowly stands up despite the pain and despite Palpatine's power, and she pushes through it, the Force protecting her and keeping her alive. This moment of strength scares Palpatine, and he focuses all of his power on Rey, but still she stands tall. Ben stands beside her, as Palpatine unleashes everything he has to destroy them. Rey says to Palpatine, "We're not afraid of you. You don't matter, and the galaxy will forget you." These words hurt Sidious more than any lightsaber could, and he screams in agony. Figures stand behind Rey, spirits of the Force, amplified by the power of the Force Nexus. Luke and Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Master Yoda, Qui-Gon Jinn, Ahsoka Tano, Cal Kestis, Kanan Jarrus, Luminara Unduli, Mace Windu, Aayla Secura, and every other Force wielder who fought for peace and justice against the dark side. You can't do this. You're no Jedi. You're right. Rey ignites her lightsaber, and Ben, as well as the countless other Jedi before her, do the same. I'm something more than that. I'm a Skywalker. Rey deflects the lightning back using the power of Ben Solo and all the Jedi behind her. The attack obliterates Palpatine, destroying his spirit and forcing him to fade away into nothing. At this moment, Finn, Rose, and Poe are still cornered, but Finn starts to sense something. He closes his eyes and senses every motion and every possibility and fires his blaster. The blaster bolt soars through the air, past troopers and obstacles, almost being warped by space itself until it hits its target. The database explodes, taking out the Sith troopers with it and giving our heroes the chance to turn the tide of the battle and claim the base. With no flight plan, the Star Destroyers of the Final Order begin to malfunction and collide into each other and soon all fall down to the surface, ending the First Order and the remnants of the Empire once and for all. The dust clears in the cavern as Rey's attack blew a massive hole in the cave and cleared a way to the surface. As Star Destroyers start to fall, Rey looks around and sees that they've won. She hears Ben moan in pain behind her, and she rushes over to help him. He's injured, but he's okay. We transition to later, where we see the Resistance celebrating. The war is over. I guess you could say the Star War is over. Everyone is happy. Poe and Finn kiss because Jesus Christ, they're gay for each other. Give me real representation and not just a half-second long kiss of unnamed characters that can be edited out later. It doesn't matter if China doesn't like it, that's bullshit, and plus Star Wars doesn't do well in China either way because they don't have the nostalgia factor of it because it never came out to them in the 70s, so who fucking cares? It doesn't even matter. During all this celebration, we see Rey standing aside, smiling at everyone enjoying themselves. But there's something that's on her mind still. Weeks later, we see Rey entering a building on Coruscant. A New Republic prison. She enters a room with white walls and a large pane of glass separating the prison cell from the outside world. In the cell, we see Ben Solo, sitting on the floor meditating. He turns as Rey enters and he smiles. Without a word, Rey sits on the floor opposite Ben, the massive sheet of glass separating them. Together, they both reach out and place their hands on the glass. Holy shit, that was long. Honestly, I'm pretty proud of this video. It's not easy taking the huge mess that is this movie and trying to turn it into something meaningful, and I normally hate myself in everything I do, but I think I did probably the best job that I could do. I really like how I incorporated Palpatine, even though it's a little similar to the plot of Wonder Woman, but I think I managed to incorporate him without disrespecting the past films, while also tying the trilogy and the whole saga together. Episode 7 was about the impact that our original heroes left behind, and Episode 8 was about how those heroes may not be able to live up to those expectations, and I think it would have been cool if Episode 9 explored the legacy that monsters and villains leave behind and how we can move on from them. Now, I was about 50-50 on Ben dying or not. I inevitably ended up deciding he should live. Not because of the Reylo relationship or anything, but true redemption isn't something that just happens. You can't just do one good deed and then die a hero. You have to work to make up for your past mistakes, and I think showing that with Ben will be really interesting. It also leads to a bit of ambiguity as to what's going to happen between him and Rey, which I think is important to make the future as broad and as full of potential as possible, since that's what the Star Wars galaxy really is. And it's better than Rey just being alone again on another desert planet. Like, that's just a very bad visual to end on. With that said, I recognize that this rewrite isn't perfect. Of course it's not. There are a lot of things that I wish I'd covered, but unfortunately due to time constraints and me wanting to stick out from the sea of super long reviews about this movie, I chose not to address certain things like Janna, Dio, Zori, and all the other new characters, and I also didn't really give people like Poe or Rose enough of a spotlight here, which I think is a real shame. There was a lot that I had written and recorded and had to cut out. This script ended up being over 15,000 words and 37 pages, which is it's insane. So I had to make the difficult decision to cut out a lot of the topics that I was really excited about, but that's not all lost to the ages. You see, for the first time ever, I've made a full hour-plus long director's cut of this video. I'm calling it the Fanboy cut. Start that hashtag. It covers topics that I normally would have had to cut out, like stuff about Rose, the spy, Janna, Leia's death, and even a big long tangent about how much I love the movie Knives Out. That's available exclusive to my Patreon if you wanted to hear my full thoughts about every single thing I have to say about this garbage fire of a movie. Overall, I'm just happy I can be finished thinking about this movie and can move on from it to think about other Star Wars media. We can all move on to new and original stories like The Mandalorian, the High Republic era, the Rebel sequel that's being rumored, and so much more to push the series forward and not being stuck in the Skywalker saga. The Rise of Skywalker may have fallen flat for a lot of people and left a bad taste in people's mouths, but that doesn't mean that Star Wars is dead and never coming back. It can still learn and grow and redeem itself and become that shining beacon of entertainment and hope that it once was for so many people. Star Wars has always brought me joy for my entire life, and a big part of the lore that I've been ignoring until recently has been the books. I'm not really a great reader, so I can't really do books, which is unfortunate since there's a lot of really amazing stories that I was missing out on. But that all changed thanks to today's sponsor, Audible. I'm not going to bore you guys with facts like how Audible's the #1 provider of audiobooks or how their library spans thousands of titles across all types of genres, but I'll just tell you my personal experience with the service because I do genuinely use it and I do genuinely love using it. And then maybe later I'll give you a little secret tip on a way you can start a free trial and get an extra audiobook, no questions asked. One of my favorite characters in Star Wars is Qui-Gon Jinn. He represents the things that interest me the most when it comes to what a Jedi should be and their values that they should hold. And with Audible, I've been able to continue exploring his story by listening to the book Master and Apprentice, which follows Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan before the events of Phantom Menace. The book is super great, and it's really cool to see the galaxy during a time before the prequel era. The best part of the book is there's a conversation between Yoda and Qui-Gon about how the Jedi are unknowingly allowing slavery to continue on certain planets. And I won't spoil anything, but it really hammers home a big theme that I talked about in this video about how the Jedi have lost their way and forgotten what really matters in life. The narrator also does a really great Liam Neeson impression, which should not go unrecognized. That book, along with other great ones like Dark Disciple, Ahsoka, and Heir to the Empire, have really sparked my interest in the Star Wars universe again, and opened my eyes to just how open and expansive the franchise can be. They also seriously helped me research some stuff for this video, like about kyber crystals and the Force, and I wouldn't have been able to do any of it without Audible due to me being a dumb baby boy who can't read good. So if you're interested in Audible and you want to help out the channel as I torture myself by making these insanely long videos that ruin my life, head over to audibletrial.com/fanboy or visit the link in the description to get your first 30 days in any choice of audiobook for completely free. Also, let me know in the comments what your favorite Star Wars book is and if there's any that I've been missing out. But anyway, with that said, thank you so much for watching. This has been a big project of mine. I've been working on it for basically since the movie came out. So I'm really happy with it and I hope you guys enjoyed. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps out the channel and really helps me out, helps me grow. Special thanks to Bugspray55, Cassidy Bond, Colton Frenchie, and Mostly Harmless for being being spectacular fanboys on my Patreon. Your support really means a lot to me. But with that said, thanks so much for watching. This has been TroyBoy17 coming at you live. Remember to wash your hands, stay safe, wear a fucking mask. Black Lives Matter, trans rights matter, justice for Breonna Taylor. Be responsible, everybody, and I'll see you around.